The collapse of Western civilization seems to be starting. Today, I was in downtown Boston for a business meeting. What I first noticed while I was driving in there, I look to my left, to my right, I see just massive amounts of homeless. And then to continue on, at one point when I was driving, there was some guy that was running into the street, and I was like, holy shit. So I stopped the car. But what this guy was doing is he was trying to save some other guy who was shooting up heroin. A middle of a 3-lane road, just cars going 40 miles an hour. It is nothing that I've ever seen before. What else was happening? Just massive amounts of trash, just absolutely everywhere. So the homeless is spreading everywhere. I've never seen anything like this. I mean, I've lived in Massachusetts my entire life, and this is my first time being back in Boston in a very long time. And the changes in just 2 years is catastrophic. Then what happened? I get to the lunch or breakfast place where I was meeting the guy. Who was super upscale, a ton of nice cars parked outside. The wealth divide. I mean, the cost of just simple things like a croissant were like $13-14, just absolutely out of this world. And everyone knows that DoorDash is super common now. So they would have their DoorDash on just a little wall. And some homeless guy ran into the store, stole all the DoorDash, ran right out. I was just shocked. I have never seen such collapsing of a economic and political landscape in my entire life. And the drastic change in which it's happening just relates to everything that me and Justin have been talking about for the past few years.
Josh, it probably also says that you've never been to downtown San Francisco either.
No, I have not.
Oh, God, yeah. I was there last year, and it's just the same nonsense that goes on. A liberal paradise.
What really boggles my mind, though, is that people think that this is a panacea. I mean, I just got back from Colombia the other day, and you would never see the amount of trash bags and just massive amounts of waste that was outside, or the homeless just shooting up heroin in front of everybody, like quite literally just injecting needles on this in front of moving cars. It is something that I couldn't even fathom. Just looking back a few years ago.
I can't speak much to Boston from personal experience, but I can speak to both San Francisco and Los Angeles. I have family over there. I typically, when I'm in downtown San Francisco, there's a Hyatt. I like to stay at downtown. And if you walk across the street, or just by a few blocks or whatever, right, you will see, like in broad daylight, people just like lying on the ground, shooting up with heroin and God knows whatever else, turds on the street, etc. And I think what goes on is that some people think that the way to deal with the situation is you try to continue to forgive, you try to continue to give rope to, et cetera, these people. And the answer is no. If you truly want to be kind to these people, you have to put in enforcement. And yes, I know it might make you feel bad, which is, the cardinal sin in today's society, because we all know today people have the morality of a 5-year-old. That is to say, things that make you feel bad are morally bad, and things that make you feel good are morally good. Damn whatever long-term or, second or third knockoff effects there are from it. But in any event, Josh, yeah, no, it's just, and here's the other thing too, if you go into all the places that those sophisticated liberals on the coastal cities shun and distaste, you will find a completely different environment. Go to Wyoming or go to Utah, go deep, or Montana, go deep in the woods or whatever, right? And you'll find that the communities there, they might be more humble and they're certainly less arrogant, but they work far better than, again, the supposed paradises on the coast.
It's kind of like the government. I don't know if you guys have ever broken a bone before, but when you break a bone and you put a cast on, after that cast, when it gets taken off, your bone is super fragile. And I mean, it is quite literally just skinny. It's super weak. You couldn't walk on it if you tried. But what the government's been trying to do is just keep on putting a cast after the bone has already been broken. They put another cast on and another cast on, when all you need to do is get some physical therapy and try and get that bone stronger again. You have to work out the muscle, and that causes that process. It takes a lot of time and a lot of pain. But what the government has been doing is trying to fill that void by slapping an extra band-aid on a problem that cannot be fixed with a band-aid. It can only be fixed with the pain and suffering that is involved through a long process.
Yeah, or actually, Josh, I'll take your analogy and maybe modify it a little bit. Like you break a bone or whatever, right? And you've got to set the bone. And it hurts, it's painful, it ain't going to be a pretty thing. But at the end of the day, until you do it, or it's a necessary step that you have to do in order to let the healing process begin. And the more you try to kick off and push down the line, the setting of the bone, and even though you might save some short-term pain, you're doing so at a tremendously high cost. So anyways, if you're going to have to do it, you might as well do it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I've been all day. I've been trying to think what could reverse the causes of this, because it's to me it seems like that the wealth divide, the massive mayhem that we're seeing, is only getting worse, and I don't see a way that it is going to get fixed. So I see two possible outcomes. One outcome is everyone is so weak. I mean, we've all had casts on us our entire life, especially the younger generations like myself. We are either going to have to take a pill, swallow some hard truth, and we're going to have to become. I mean, we are weak men today, and we are going to go through hard times. We will have to accept those hard times and emerge as stronger men, which is going to be a long process. Or the second option I see is a big, strong man coming into power and saying, I can fix your problems. You guys do not need to delegate any hardship because I will slap another band-aid on this issue. And you know what? Everything will be great again with me in power. So we could elect some sort of a dictatorial leader, which will take us to some utopian dictatorship world.
Well, Josh, the good news, I don't see Andrew Tate running for office anytime soon. So I think we're hopefully okay on that front. But
John, what do you think is most like? What outcome do you think is most likely? I mean, we've never seen something like that in the Americas. I mean, I would hope the land of the free would take the former instead of the latter, but the policies and the people are so ridiculously weak that I don't see a way that if there's a strong man saying that they have the solution to all the world's problems, I hope that they would call their bullshit, because it's not feasibly possible, but I don't know what would happen.
I think what has to happen is that the pain has to get high enough where people say, wait a minute, the precepts, the driver files, the lenses that we use to look at the world, something is broken. And it's probably that. This is a very hard thing to do. But as someone that I like to follow once said, only at the precipice, of one's doom or whatever, right, will they find the will to change. And so my gut feeling is that in order to basically, I know it's cliche, but in order to wake people up, you have to bring them right to the edge. And hopefully they don't go over the edge in the process of trying to do that. There's that. And the second thing I would say is, as much as this sucks, as much as this is bad, et cetera, if you consider this through the lens of the fourth turning, I would say we're exactly where we should be. Now, that's not to say we're in a good spot, but it is maybe a ray of hope saying, well, look, we've been here before. And as you alluded to earlier, we have a generation, the boomers, that never measured up to their fathers. And that a generation that's done everything to make certain their sons never measure up to them. So that's, I think, again, as a generation, that's, I think, kind of where we're at right now. And sooner or later, the millennials and the Zoomers something will happen. There'll be some catalyst or a series of catalysts that will resonate. And not just probably with the millennials and the Zoomers, but with the Gen Xers and the boomers. But something will happen, probably something bad. And whether or not we can rise up to the challenge as a whole of society and respond to the challenge, at which point that would be the good thing as we get through it. We go through that great gate of history and we get off to the other side better. That's the good outcome. The bad outcome is that we do not adequately respond to the challenge and things get materially worse.
So with these two outcomes, Alay, what is it that we can actually do? I can only think of a few feasible options. You have to position yourself to be extremely nimble, to be able to drop things at a drop of a hat. I mean, you can't be concreted into the floor and say, I am moving here for 12 years and there's nothing that can stop me. You have to change with the tides. And if you see the forest for the trees coming towards you, you have to be nimble enough to leave that area and move. Yeah. If I was someone who was living in the city of Boston and this stuff was going around me, this was the first time I was genuinely like scared.
Yeah. Josh, what I would say is this: as you say, you have to be flexible. You have to be able to identify and change things. It's not just in the external world. That is like, where do I live? What do I do for work? Whatever, right? But it's also in the internal world. Like, how do I think? What do I think is good? What do I think is bad? Who's trying to fool me? Who's trying to tell the truth, etc. So, I mean, there's both change that needs to occur on the external and the internal. So never forget that.
Yeah, it seems like the Western world is collapsing right in front of us. Is this like the Roman Empire? Where are we in this cycle? Who knows? But we do seem to be heading further and further off the deep end.
Walking towards the cliff edge.